Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation. Hey friends, hi, how are you? It's leowt here. I always sound like I'm shocked when I do this intro, and it's because I am. I'm just waiting for it to pop up on Facebook. So if you ever catch me doing this weird like blank stare, like I'm staring at nothing and trying to smile, that's absolutely what I'm doing, is staring at nothing and trying to smile, because the Zoom goes live a little bit like a thief in the night, if you will, there. So if you see me looking awkward, first of all, that's a daily occurrence. But second of all, I promise there's something happening on my computer screen. So if you're new here, hey, my name is leowt, and this is Conversations. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to have spiritually minded conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. And the single most important tenet of Conversations is that absolutely everybody's voice matters. And with that, I try to get on the most interesting and diverse and unique thinkers that I come across of. And I have had the pleasure of having friends and, like heroes and scholars and colleagues all over the board on this podcast. And tonight is certainly no exception. I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine who you folks see here on the screen with me. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but all I'm going to say is we are in class together in an Abrahamic Faiths in Conversation class, and they produced one of the most moving works of poetry that I've read in a very, very long time. So I've been wanting to do an episode about Israel and Palestine for a long time, but it only does so good if I, as like a white Christian from a Christian, conservative-based area of the country, it only does so good if I say what I'm thinking about Israel and Palestine. So my friend and I were actually worked together on a project around Israel and Palestine, and so I kind of was like, "Please, sir, would you come on my podcast?" And she said yes. So I'm going to let my friend introduce herself, and then we'll get started chatting. So take it away, friend.
Thanks so much, Leo, for that wonderful introduction, and I'm so happy to be here. My name is Aisha Saphan, and I'm a PhD student at Chicago Theological Seminary, and my degree is in interreligious studies and Islamic studies. So I mostly focus on mysticism. Sufism has become really central to not only my own spirituality, but also my scholarly work. And it is at the heart of my studies as well. And it so embodies the heart as well. But Sufism remains, I think, that core, which gives me inspiration to do work in interreligious studies. And within Sufism exists this idea called the path of love, or the religion of love. So I see this at the crux of my study. And personally, I see the religion of love as finding peace and healing within and then into the world. So, with that, there are many connotations of, I think, oneness and wholeness, transformation, unity, and most importantly, love. So, that brings my studies together in many ways, which relates into religious studies, because I think when you go with that purpose, interreligious studies can be that much more purposeful, but I also think that much more inclusive as well.
Absolutely.
So I look at mysticism a lot of times, but also women. So women in Islam is also central to a lot of my work. Even within Sufism itself, I oftentimes look at female mystics, and I see this connected to the idea of peace and healing, simply because I think any real peace and healing in the world would require female liberation as a necessary facet. So that's what ties all my work together. And Palestine is in a way connected to that. And I'll get into that, I guess, in a little while. But
Absolutely.
that's about me.
I so love, like, every time I get to interact with you, I really dig you as a person, because I feel like this like genuineness and this truly like deeply undergirded sense of love and open postured interreligious nature from you. And it's so cool to me. Like, I swear today I said to my wife, I made the best decision I've ever made in my life with pursuing my education in such an interreligious space at CTS. And I keep running into the coolest folks, and I'm just so happy that I have the privilege to learn from you as much as our professors. I can't thank you enough for just your voice in the class, and I can really feel that deeply grounded sense of love emanating from you, and I'm really pumped to just chat with you tonight. So.
Well, thank you. And likewise, Leo, your voice in class and your energy, I think really it's so central to our class. And I'm so grateful to have you within our class as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who don't know or who haven't been in our class, because there's like 9 of us, we it's like the smallest class ever, but we have class participants all the way from Chicago to Olean, New York, to Senegal, to Tennessee. Like, we're all over the place. And the majority of our class is Muslim. And then there's myself and my professor, who is a self-described Christian with Jewish theological leanings, which I think is the camp I fall into. And then we have our friend Gabriel, who is just the consummate interreligious person who literally can't pick a religion because he sees such value in all of them. So we get to have these great conversations. And the way we started is by looking at the commonalities between all 3 Abrahamic faiths. So Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all tie back to the story of Abraham. And as part of one of our assignments, we had to pick a topic and do a group presentation, which group presentations usually make my armpits sweat and I don't enjoy them. But I had a great time working with Aisha, and we did a project on the Israel-Palestine conflict, the history of it, the situation we find ourselves in modernity, the racial and religious tensions, all of it. And Aisha wrote this amazing piece, and I think it's really important for us to hear it. So she's going to share this work, and I'll let you preface it however you want. You can jump right in, or you can let folks know a little bit about how it came to be. But I think you guys are in for a really impactful moment listening to this work. So.
Yes, sure. So we had this assignment for our class to give a presentation about Israel and Palestine. And I am not Palestinian personally, but my husband actually is. And he grew up there in the West Bank in the city of Hebron under occupation for his entire life. And I asked him told him about my assignment and told him I have to give this presentation. What do you think I should say? You as a Palestinian, what should my peers know? And at first he was like, it's your assignment, like, you worry about it. And he then proceeded to go on a bit of a heartfelt rant, and just sort of spilling his own feelings related to his homeland. And I thought, wow, this is just so profound and beautiful. I was like on my phone trying to jot everything down that he was saying, and I refashioned it into a piece that I presented to our class. So it's titled Daydreaming of Palestine, and it's basically in my husband's voice. So here goes. What does a Palestinian dream of? He dreams of going to the beach, of getting a sunburn and feeling the sea breeze, of immersing himself in a water big and free. I've traveled to Ramallah where I've smelt teasing scents of a nearby sea, but could never go there. I dream of borders that are wide and open so I can go to the beach. As a child, I dreamt of the sea. I dream of a country free of borders, where Palestinians can come and go as they please. A place where I can travel without difficult to obtain permits. A place where I can work wherever I wish. I dream of Palestinians having rights and respect. A place where a child need not lose their dignity at an early age. I dream of freedom. I dream of a place free of occupation. What if a country seeking to occupy did right by the people occupied? What if they gave them education? What if they developed it, invested in it, loved it? What if they filled the occupied land with goodness and care, not tear gas and checkpoints? I see your teens preparing for the military, new to the world, yet tasked with war. They are young and confused. How can I blame them? They are taught to suspect any and all Palestinians as dangerous or a terrorist. I see my fellow Palestinians met with the suspect, treated as a number, as something less than human. Why must we all suffer because of the acts of a few, because of fear? What if you gave us a chance to live with dignity and human rights? Maybe we can show you our love, compassion, and hospitality. Maybe we can get together all the way to Jerusalem. Maybe we could eat maklube at the same table and hear the laughter of our children in unison. Maybe you could teach me your chutzpah and about Jewish community. We have no freedom, no proper education, no developed economy. What if we could share with you? Instead of an Israel separate from the West Bank and Gaza, instead of an Israeli state and a Palestinian state, what if one country emerged together? Now I ask you to imagine. Imagine a country without borders. Imagine children learning together, playing together. Imagine a whole generation forgetting the instilled beliefs, fears, and biases of their parents and their grandparents. Imagine people being able to live. Imagine a whole generation believing in peace. I'm not saying give us a new airport. Let us have access to yours. I'm not saying for you to leave. Stay, and may we live together equally and in peace. I am not saying this could happen overnight, but isn't it worth taking a chance to let a land that has never seen peace see it? I have seen glimpses of this already. I've seen an Israeli soldier helping a Palestinian who was using a breathing machine pass by. I've seen Palestinians helping Israeli soldiers injured in the streets. In Palestine, I've seen humanity right before my eyes. I have learned that innate quality of forgiveness prevalent in us human beings. I see that we are born with forgiveness. It can't be ripped out of us nor severed from our nature. What if we could all realize it? You see, I'm attached to this beautiful land too, this land of hills and olive trees, this land of milk and honey. It's the only place where I can find myself. After all, it is the first place I dreamt of the sea and of a land open and free.
Ugh. Every time. First of all, my friend Dallas is crying. My friend Zenti is like feeling this. It's like they're having a moment, the same kind of moment that I had when I heard this the first time. I feel like I should just like end the video because really that was the whole point of it. But I think you bring up such amazing points. And without going all the way back over our class presentation, I think you really hit at something that we don't necessarily see a lot in common conversation, which is really like the humanity and the real lived experience of Palestinian individuals. I think that people are so caught up, especially in America, in like the images of war that we forget like the real life experiences of people who are Palestinian.
Yes, I think you're so right. I think that goes in two ways, that we're often desensitized to seeing these images of violence, where we kind of lose the humanity of these people. That goes for refugees, that goes for, so many people in these images that just, flood the media space these days. And also, we don't see that humanity because of the language that's often used to describe Palestinians. They're just basically what I mentioned as being seen as suspect or and dangerous and just something always to be watched. And the occupation, of course, reinforces that idea that these people are dangerous. So you really, yes, you lose the humanity. Yet I've lived in Palestine, you visited there, and I have not, I mean, it's sad to say, oh, speaking of humanity, for people are humans, but it's a beautiful, the way they live is just so beautiful. And the hospitality that I have seen there is uncomparable to anything I've ever seen. And I think that just speaks to the Palestinian people, their resilience, strength, their love, and their forgiveness. That is
Yeah.
the Palestinian people. So
Yeah, and I think it's so wild to me. And you brought is it called the Dabka? Is that the dance?
yeah.
Okay, so you brought that up in class, and for those of you who aren't watching, you should look it up because it's this really, really cool dance that's unique to the Palestinian people. And the way that you didn't so much call out people for particular beliefs about the Israel-Palestine conflict, but you called people into conversation with Palestine. And I feel like a lot of people, especially people in like an American or Canadian, or let's say countries who haven't actively had occupations occurring within their borders, right? We can't understand what it's like to live under occupation, let alone to live under occupation and still be a beautiful, vibrant culture that would be so courageous as to invite people in. What do you think it is about, like, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on, the impacts of occupation in Palestine, maybe a quick, like, brief explanation of how that functions and how you see that affect Palestinian people, both for negative and for positive.
Yeah, so the occupation operates in a few different ways. It operates differently in various parts of Palestine, but in the West Bank where I lived, that oftentimes means this land is occupied. And so it's not its own nation. It is basically at the control and power of the nation occupying it.
Mhm,
Um, and I think one of the big issues there is the existence of Israeli settlers within that area.
mhm,
So you have the need for occupation forces, checkpoints, and things to basically protect the settler population
mhm,
from the Palestinians that reside there.
mhm,
Um, so it is about being watched. It is about experiencing daily humiliations. It is about not having rights and dignity. It is oftentimes about having your own driving routes cut off from each other, families cut off from each other, homes cut off from each other. Um, and that's just in a nutshell.
mhm.
But basically, um, that is a briefer on what the occupation is. And I think to answer your question, how this affects Palestinians and their daily life, it is that feeling of not ever really being free.
Mhm.
And so you see that operate in a few different ways. I think for Palestinians, then the home and the family becomes so important, and so central. So I'm in this, when I visited and lived there, I'm in, a very, dangerous, unsafe place. But then within the home, I always felt so safe, because of the people, the love that they give, and just that sense of family is so strong there. And I think, that relates a little bit to what they have been through as a people.
Yeah, I feel like that makes absolute sense because, like, even in like my life of relative privilege, being at the time cisgendered privilege, white privilege, Christian privilege, able-bodied privilege, all of the layers of privilege that I have, still at the moments when myself and my family have gone through the biggest things, like, there is that tendency to pull inward, and to find support within the family. And I would imagine only how much more that would be heightened in a state where you are in constant danger, right? For those of you who don't know, also a note, so the like Israeli settlements that happen, so when people move into Palestinian areas and occupy them, that's actually like internationally illegal. It's not legal in any way, shape, or form. And the amount of territory that Israel has taken from Palestine is drastic. And so that kind of leads to the situation that we see at hand. I'll post some maps and resources in the comments here on Facebook and then in YouTube and podcast form so you can get the idea, so we don't have to go over it all. But there are very, very massive constrictions and dehumanizing situations that Palestinian individuals have to live under. And yet there's still this, what Aisha wrote of, that was like this spirit and attitude of hope and beauty. And I want to bring that out as much as we talk about, occupation and conflict, is that juxtaposition of beauty and family and hospitality. Because I feel like if we're going to move forward as people, we have to be able to hold both of those things together, right? We have to be able to integrate them. So I'd like to talk, before we move sort of into that sort of really positive direction, I'd like to talk to you about something that you and I discussed in our presentation, which is the question, is the Israel-Palestine conflict, does that create an apartheid state? Could you maybe explain that a little bit to people? Because I feel like it's a really salient point of conversation.
Yes, I think what is at the crux of that argument is just the basic way that Palestinian and Israelis are separated in society, based in rights and geographically. And also, I think what's very pertinent to that topic is the separation wall that basically separates Israel from the West Bank. So that is one of the main, symbols or images that come to mind when you talk about Israel as an apartheid state. So basically, people are very hesitant to use, terms within this conflict because they oftentimes become politicized.
Right.
So it's almost difficult to use this terminology because as soon as you do, you kind of, you basically get people, to basically not listen to you anymore that maybe previously it would. So it's very complicated. That this conflict oftentimes, revolves around those keywords.
Yeah.
But I think if we just look at the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, and look at just, the human rights violations that exist within that region, it's not overly complicated. This is something that is unjust and definitely needs.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.